This podcast is brought to you by Audible, which is giving away free audiobooks to listeners of the Engadget Podcast. If you appreciate this show, the best way to show your support is to head over to audible.com/Engadget. You can download Blue Notes by Joan Didion or Robopocalypse by Daniel H. Wilson. Listen to them at any time, totally for free. Go to audible.com/Engadget for your free audiobook. Hello, my name is Tim Stevens. I'm the editor-in-chief of Engadget. Welcome to the Engadget Podcast for the week of...
the 18th.
18th, Brian. Good
Or
you're
today's
here.
the 18th.
Today's 18th.
Oh, so...
It's the week of the 14th.
14th? I'm glad you're here too, Peter.
No, it's a week of the 15th because their tax day was Monday.
Yeah, you're right. And
we'll figure this out.
And when I was updating the date on the schedule for last week, it said it was the eighth. It said
Did
was
I do
April
that?
8th.
I must have done that. I read it right, I think. Maybe. Welcome back to the state of New York, right here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be in your time zone again, Tim.
Well, I was in your time
We
zone.
saw each other very... Is that I guess it is my time zone.
Sure.
Officially.
Like ships in the night in Seattle.
Had a good day together in Seattle.
It was lovely. Yeah, we went to the Experience Music Project,
Yeah.
EMP, in Seattle. Looked at the Paul Allen private toy collection in the science. If you ever go to Seattle, you should definitely check out the EMP museum. It's pretty cool
For music purposes, but
for
also...
music purposes. But there's also like this alcove of sci-fi stuff. Have you ever had the chance
Yeah.
to go there?
I've been. We actually did an event at the Sci-Fi Museum a couple years ago.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. It was awesome.
Darth Vader's lightsaber in there. Some
Yeah.
Star Trek thing nobody cares about.
The amazing part is that if you read the small print on every label, it says courtesy of the Paul Allen family collection, which means they're all his toys. It's all just his private collection that he's put on display, which is amazing.
I also had the pleasure of we both jointly interviewed the gentleman who curates most of the music exhibits there, and I had the pleasure of asking him whether he's sick and tired after 10 years of curating Nirvana exhibits over and over again.
And Jimi Hendrix. He said this is the 8th or the 9th Jimi Hendrix exhibit they've done?
This one was really cool though. This
It
was,
was.
I think this was actually an interesting take on the Jimi Hendrix experience, as it were. Wherein
Grown.
Wherein they used
Too easy, man.
all of
I expect
the,
a higher pun, better pun from you.
Did not sleep.
The
I did
podcast
not
is
sleep
young.
a
The
lot.
podcast is young.
But they curated all the kind of interesting, basically like borderline dandy stuff that he was wearing on that first trip to
A lot
London,
of velvet.
which is where kind of how they broke through. They were not making it over here.
Yeah,
toured with the Monkees in the U.S.
Right. And then he came back and then took over the world, of course, and burned a lot of guitars. And the fragments of many of those guitars are now on display
Who
there.
knew that opening for the Walker Brothers would have been such a big breakthrough for Jimi Hendrix?
If you're watching us live, we are in a new, somewhat cramped space at the moment, but our studio is currently being destroyed. So we're going to be building this out a little bit better, and hopefully it'll be more amenable. But again, we do record this podcast live every week at 3:30 on Thursday afternoons Eastern Time. So hopefully you can join us next time if you're not watching live.
There's something about this show that every time we do it, they have to destroy a new studio. So
It is. This is
probably won't
the
be,
second or the
sticking
third
around much
studio
longer. This
that
is
we
probably
Yeah,
the
don't
third
get
studio.
attached too much
Yeah.
to this.
No,
space.
I think we should put a green screen back here behind me so that I can be like flying through space as we talk or something like that. That's pretty good.
Are we picking up my squeaks? How is that? Is that
Just stop moving, Brian.
Don't move.
Brian's got a squeaky chair, and my chair's too. I feel short now because I think
Yeah.
I think I'm the shortest.
Peter is booming out.
Booming.
Okay.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
let's work through
Unless
all
you
these-
really like my voice, in which case it's awesome.
Let's work through all these. This is the time to work through all these issues right now before.
Right before we actually
Hey.
start talking about important
Yeah.
things.
Before we get into the mix.
Cool. How are we doing? How are we sounding out there? Are you following along in the chat?
Yeah, I'll try to talk louder. Gadget priest, I apologize.
Talk taller, Tim.
Talk taller.
Andre the Giant. You want a peanut?
You know, I just realized that Francis's wife on House of Cards is Princess Buttercup.
Oh, that's Robin Wright Penn. That's Sean Penn's ex. I guess they're ex.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had no idea I'd ever put
Yeah.
that connection together until this weekend.
Why is Brian's name where Peter is sitting?
That's a fair question.
We didn't switch. I was always sitting on this side.
I mean, we could. I guess we could switch now, or I can. Does that mean I can start getting Peter's paychecks? Is that how this works?
Probably not. All right. Well, I think we should get rolling. How are we doing?
I'm going to sit further back.
Cool.
We're complaining.
You,
Or at least one guy's complaining.
you feeling?
About the booming, or just about you being too close to Tim? There's a lot of weird tension.
I'm too much. I'm too loud.
Okay. Good.
You feeling good?
Everybody
All
good?
right.
Joe's feeling good. Let's
Okay.
dive
Let's
in
jump.
because we got a lot to talk about.
Sure.
Starting with Twitter Music, which launched today.
It's true. There's been a landing page sitting around for a weird amount of time.
And there's been all this talk about what they're doing with We Are Hunted for a long time, and finally it's all come together.
Yeah, We Are Hunted. It was a third party app. I only knew it actually because they were connected to Spotify. They were one of that initial line of applications that Spotify did when it launched its app store.
Well, they were going bankrupt, so they were about to go.
We are bankrupt.
Yeah, we are bankrupt. So they needed to find a home for it, and I think it's a good fit, all things considered.
Yeah, it's an interesting proposition because certainly this isn't going to be taking the place of Spotify or RDO for anybody soon. It's basically it's kind of like Twitter's own version of the Billboard charts, where it's just that you, on the front page you're greeted with the top 140 most popular things that are being talked about. 140, clever. On Twitter right now, and you see the name of the song, you see the cover art, and you can click on that and play through. You get a 30-second preview on iTunes. If you're a Spotify or Didio subscriber, then you can do the full length version of that. There's also a drop down. It'll give you some personalized recommendations. You can check all the music from the bands of people that you follow. You can see what your friends are listening to. I had some trouble with the recommendations. I did it hands-on with the desktop and the iOS app. Android was coming soon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that was just because I'm not following enough musicians right now, or whether the system isn't doing a great job cataloging right now. But the only thing I was really able to interact with at the time of the hands-on was the top 140. So a lot of Psy, a lot of Taylor Swift. All of my favorites were there.
Absolutely. Exciting stuff.
Well, that's why I'm kind of wondering, is there that much demand for this? I mean, what problem does it really solve?
It solves the main problem that it solves is that Twitter has traditionally had a lot of trouble monetizing its content.
Yeah, but other than that,
yeah, that's the main thing. Is it's a new revenue stream for them.
Just because if I use Spotify, and you kind of have to use Spotify or RDO or something like that to get the full value from this, you can already follow your friends on Spotify and RDO.
Yeah, I think this is again targeted toward somebody. It's not targeted toward us, certainly, and it's targeted toward people who in the past traditionally would have found out about music through terrestrial radio, through MTV, sources like that just kind of want to be served up the most popular stuff. It's a quick and easy way to do that. I mean, that's the one thing I think it has going for it.
But I mean, do those people even care enough to install an app like this?
Do you need to use this app? I mean,
well, you can do it on the browser. I'm
just saying
to go through to sign in to do all that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think what's going to happen is I think there's going to be enough buzz to it right now that everybody's going to be curious enough to sign up for it, and some of them will probably continue to use it. But there's nothing in here that's compelling at all, I think.
Does this make Twitter overall a more compelling social network, or does it really just a little bit of kind of extra shine on the network?
It doesn't, because it doesn't make it more social. This is a way of discovering this content. It's not connecting with you with. I mean, I take that back. I was going to say it's not connecting with people any better, but it's connecting with bands better. Certainly. I mean, it's maybe people will more actively engage with bands on Twitter.
I can certainly, as you alluded to, give Twitter more ways to monetize, because they can now target their advertising so much better because they know what you're listening to, what you're into.
Well, yeah, and I mean, on a very baseline, I'm sure that they've got a kind of a Amazon affiliate kind of type deal with iTunes, RDO, and Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not blown away. I mean, it's a first effort, but I think that we've seen a variety of apps. Like, I mean, We Are Hunted kind of did this. Their app kind of already did this stuff before, which was trying to.
This says Twitter's backing, which
sure, but I'm just saying in terms of like if you're interested in surfacing, music discovery.
Yeah,
and I think this is. I mean, I think this is one of the things where I think that there is much less interest in music discovery than everyone in the industry wants there to be.
I don't think that's entirely true. I think it's more just that very few companies have really done it and done it in a compelling
No, but
manner.
everyone does it. Everyone does I'm just saying, like, I think that the interest. I think that culturally, there's much less interest in music now than there was 20 or 30 years ago as a cultural phenomenon.
I don't know if I entirely agree.
Oh, I absolutely believe that.
I think it's much more fragmented, but I think people are probably listening to as much music as they are. I don't think there's
actually
as much interest in the huge names as there used to be.
No, but I'm saying I think that people are less. I think that music, in terms of people defining their identity, is a much less important component than it once was.
Yeah, it's probably more difficult to do that, and certainly it's because a lot of people. I mean, certainly you and I traditionally as like fans of like punk rock or hardcore or indie rock, like none of that stuff is as weird or hard to get. So yeah, it is a little. I don't know if people aren't as interested. It's just a lot more difficult to define yourself as that at this point. But yeah, it's not. I think the main thing to me that makes this not particularly compelling is the first thing that they're throwing out there at you is this most popular list. If there was a better way of connecting with your friends, if there was a better way of finding out what they were listening to, if that was really the kernel here, I think it would be a better service. I think RDO does that really well. They've traditionally done social music really well. Yeah. Spotify's doing a pretty decent job with that now, with that kind of river on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
It sounds like this could be really cool, but it sounds like you having to go that extra step of assigning it to something else to make it work is what's really going to kill this.
To me, it's like, remember which was like, blew up on Facebook years and years ago and disappeared because it turns out that people actually like don't really care that much about what their friends are listening to.
Yeah, I mean, I maybe this is just me, but I find Spotify's social stream very compelling, and I will click on.
I'm not saying that no one does. I'm saying that like
this is for me.
I'm saying like a lot of people don't, and I think that if you remember, I think it's why kind of Last FM kind of maxed out, and I think that it's why remember the social, which was the whole spin on Zune, and
that flamed out for a number of
Well,
reasons.
but what I'm saying is that like we've seen a lot of people try to do this, and I think that at the end of the day, that the audience of people that are sort of say, I want to find out about new artists and music through like what my friends are listening to. I think that that's not a huge universe of people. I don't think that's like I don't want to say it's not a mainstream thing, but I think it's just like most people just don't care that much.
I think Tim really hit the nail on the head. I think the main
thank you, Brian.
The main hang up here is that it's dependent on these other services. To really listen to music, you need an RDO account or you need a Spotify account, and it's not doing anything those services don't already do, especially in terms of social right. music. And again, if you are, and certainly there are people out there who are interested in social music discovery. You're probably already a member of one of those sites, right? I mean,
absolutely. You probably already have friends on there, and you're probably already following people.
Yeah, and everybody. I mean, everybody on Facebook, whether they like it or not, is kind of attached to Spotify at this point, whether or not they have a premium account.
Indeed. Well, yeah. So that's Twitter Music launching now. You should try some hashtags if you want to. Or
definitely give it a shot. It's a real, it's got a very clean, easy to use layout. The coding on it's very nice. The player is really cool. It's a well made thing. It's just not a thing that has really any place in this world right now.
Something else that could be argued, perhaps, is in the same situation.
We should know quickly it's iOS only though, not Android.
True.
That's true.
Android's
but if you have a computer with a browser, then you can try it out.
Well, but you know what I mean. It's like
for sure. I'm sure that's coming in the very near future.
I hope so. But Vine is still iOS only.
Fair point.
So we'll see. It's a weird prejudice.
Yeah.
Something that's Android only is Google Glass. And the first Explorer edition shipped this week to the... we're not really sure exactly how many went out or exactly how Google is prioritizing these.
They're all on eBay.
They're not on eBay. The one did wind up on eBay. I think it went up to $90,000 before they pulled it.
Apparently, they're bricking them too. If you're
we were talking about that earlier. Google is saying effectively that they're not allowing people to sell these things or even to give them to their friends. That they will shut them down. And certainly this auction was pulled. We're not sure if it was eBay pulling it just because there were so many fake bids or if it was actually Google who made the request. I don't think it'll be the last one to show up on eBay. But anyway, there are some that are being shipped. Not sure exactly how many are going out there. There was about 2,000 pre-orders from last year's Google I.O. at, I think, $15.99. Is that right? I think is what they were asking for them.
It was your credit card.
It was. So I did pre-order, and I have not gotten the note myself yet. I get the feeling that maybe it was just Bay Area people at this point. That'd be that might be my guess, because one of the people who did the unboxing said that they met Sergey when they picked it up, and they had like a nice experience sort of thing. And I'm guessing Sergey will not be hand delivering these to everybody.
I don't know. I mean, he's
for $1,500 though.
Yeah, and he's got a lot more free time these days than he used to.
Sure. I want him to skydive into my house.
Wouldn't that be the ultimate Google Glass video? Is like him just recording, walking up to people's doorsteps and handing them the Google Glass
in that Tesla that he was driving around last week or 2 weeks ago.
Self-driving Tesla.
No, not yet. So there are a few out there now. There are a couple unboxings on Google Plus and YouTube, of course. So expect to see a lot more pictures and a lot more experiences happening over the next couple of weeks as these things start to go out into the wild.
Yeah,
which we're pretty excited about. So we'll be watching this closely.
And they'll be watching you closely.
Yeah. Watch out. So we are, still waiting. I'm still waiting on my email. I want my glass pre-order.
We could probably get you a Vuzix in the meantime.
That'd be just as good. Yeah. Just as good. If any of you out there have received yours, let us know. We'd love to hear what you think of them so far.
I didn't try to get one. Did you try to get one?
I wasn't at I.O.
No, but I'm just saying, even with the whole I have glass, or I want glass.
Oh, no, I'm waiting on this one for
gonna live vicariously. Yeah. I think.
I got a hands-on with it a couple months ago at a meeting with Google, and I thought it was pretty cool. It definitely works much better than I expected for what they're calling a developer unit. But I just felt like when the consumer version comes out, it'll probably cost less, and it'll probably be a little bit better.
It'll be stuff,
maybe better battery life and things like that. I think there'll probably be apps sooner rather than later. But the other thing is, I normally wear contact lenses, and if I was going to get these, I'd actually probably want to have them built into a pair of glasses, because they feel so. Yeah. It feels so douchey to kind of walk around without, if they were built into glasses, it'd be like a little more, a little less conspicuous.
They've got, that's the,
because you would just you'd have your regular eyeglasses, then just like a little thing there, rather than like this weird headband.
But they're supposed to be conspicuous by their nature, right?
They're brightly colored, so they're certainly not hiding. I was actually speaking with somebody from Google this morning who was here in New York, and he basically, I asked him why he wasn't wearing his, and he said, "Well, I had to take them off because I could only get 5 feet down the street before somebody would stop me and ask me what those things are and ask if they could try them on." So they are very conspicuous, and they are not really compatible with glasses right now. They have these clip-on sunglasses things that you can attach to them, but if you already wear glasses, you cannot. If you want the George LaForge look, but you cannot use your own glasses with them. So that's a little bit of a shortcoming.
I'm hoping that
but it's version 1.0.
Yeah, the way that they're designed is that actually the what are we even calling it? The frame or whatever?
Yeah.
You can detach the actual component electronic part from the frame.
Right.
And so the idea that they would come up with some version that maybe clips onto a regular pair of eyeglasses, or work with, they're working with Warby Parker and other companies to, do versions that work with prescription glasses. So I think that it'll come.
Well, I was going to say, that it's probably not something that they would do in the developer unit. But now that I'm thinking about it, what percentage of developers have some sort of eye issue? It's probably incredibly high.
I bet you it's pretty high. Yeah, I bet you it is pretty high.
But when we were at South by Southwest, they gave that little developers speech, and right after, I don't know if I talked about this on the podcast. So stop me if I have. But at the end, the first question from the audience was somebody getting up and basically saying, I don't think anything that you've showed us here is compelling. Show us the compelling apps. They showed off the New York app, they showed off the Gmail app. But obviously this is Google just developing a platform for people to do interesting things on. So I think that it makes sense to wait for this to be out for a little while.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's Google's approach. They would much rather throw it out there when it's not quite ready and let the market kind of adjust to it and let the market help to build it, rather than waiting for it to be fully polished and ready and a truly compelling consumer experience.
There's going to be, there's unquestionably in those 2,000 that are going out amongst, I assume, mostly developers, because it was I.O., there's going to be some really, really interesting stuff created with there.
I think so.
And the camera app is pretty cool. Reading the news, doing your email, that's all pretty cool, but none of that certainly justifies the price at this point.
Yeah. I would say for me, in some ways, the camera is the least interesting part of it, because if you just want to record what you're doing, you can get a GoPro and do it probably much more cheaply.
You can, but if you talk about conspicuous stuff, those things are super.
I know, but like we were saying on an earlier podcast, if you wanted to secretly record someone, you can. Yeah, you can do that already. But I'm saying if you just want a camera that records your point of view, you can do that already. You've been able to do that for a long time.
Right.
I think it's actually the ability to. I think the Google Now integration is to me the most interesting thing, where you can pull up, have data related to like what you're doing, directions and maps and things like that. To be able to pull that stuff up really quickly that's the part that was most interesting to me.
Yeah, I think checking your emails, having it read them to you is a pretty cool thing too, not having to pull your phone out. But again, probably not enough reason to do that. I think as soon as they create a Vine app for this, through the roof. I mean, that's my main problem, right? I'm like, I've been in Vine mode lately, where I've been walking down the street, seeing stuff, realizing it'll be perfect Vine.
You have. And then fumbling for your phone and trying to launch the app quickly enough.
Because this actually is due for an upgrade. So you watch like Vine slowly load, and then the magic is gone.
You missed your moment.
Yeah.
We also did get the final specs, or the formal specs for this device. A 720p camera on the front. It'll do 5 megapixel stills, and we haven't got a formal battery size or life, but they're saying it'll last all day long. So, and it charges over micro USB. It's also got Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so you can connect to your phone in multiple different ways.
Maybe a Lionel Richie tie in there.
All day long. Don't get us sued. Don't get us sued.
All day. That was like I'm unprotected under.
That's it.
Weird Al's.
We have to pay him. We have to pay Mechanical now on this podcast.
Moving right along, we were pretty excited that it was Austin that was going to get Google Fiber last week, and now it's Provo, Utah is being added to the list. So there are three local municipalities that are now going to be offering Google Fiber, which is 2 more than there were a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I like this. I like this alternative approach. I think it's nice. So Kansas City was a cool place to start it in, because it's nice seeing this happen outside of New York or Los Angeles. But it's probably also a lot easier for them to do it in a city like this. I mean, A, just in terms of infrastructure, and B, in terms of like the government being really excited to help you with it.
Then they are very excited. I mean, there's pictures here. I think this is the mayor with his fist up in the air. And the mayor actually wrote on his personal blog about how excited he was about Google Fiber. And sure, I mean, when have we ever written about Provo, Utah on Engadget? And when will we ever write about Provo, Utah
Brad
again?
is probably doing some exciting
Perhaps. So congratulations, Provo. We are all officially jealous of your connectivity. And again, they're going to do the same agreement that they've done elsewhere, a $30 sign-up fee, and then you get a 5 megabit line for free effectively after that. And if you want to pay extra, you can get hundreds and hundreds of megabits down and really make us all jealous.
And they acquired did they purchase the network that was already there?
Yeah, there's a network called iProvo, which is like an attempt at a municipal.
Oh, where did they come up with that name?
I wonder. Yeah, it was an attempt at a municipal internet service.
You could like date like when something is named by, like if it were like 15 years ago, it'd be eProvo.
Yeah, what vowel are we on now?
Provo Lee.
Yeah, they should call it Y-Provo. That's what everybody's asking.
So they're going to be building on top of that network. There are no formal dates given, but I guess sometime next year, which would be about when Austin's going to drop too.
Surely Google has addressed how interested they are and what kind of time frame they're looking at to come to major cities, right?
I guess they've got a long list beyond this, I would think. Yeah.
But New York, for example, is probably pretty far down on the list.
New York would be extremely expensive to watch. I mean, Verizon can't even bring fiber to. I mean, and they're not a monopoly because obviously competing against Time Warner here. But from what I understand, the cost of wiring up a single home in New York is so expensive that It never pays for itself. I heard it costs something like $4,000 to $5,000. Not 45, but $4,000 or $5,000 per home.
So that's about 2 months of FiOS, right there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
That cost may have come down, but it's just like to bring fiber to an apartment building is very, very expensive.
I'm just kind of amazed at and I'm sure there are similar problems. It can't be nearly as bad as it is in New York, but I'm kind of amazed at Palo Alto, Mountain View, Sunnyvale aren't on there. There's places where all the Googlers are living, right?
Yeah, they've got to be demanding their own access to this sort of network. And I'm certainly, again, we'll just throw a vote behind Albany, New York, because it's a nice small area with friendly municipalities and
I think there's some
friendly
PR
people
20 minutes outside of Albany.
Perhaps.
I think there's some PR value to bringing it to places outside of Silicon Valley.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And also, I think they want to be able to get the patterns of usage from more normal Americans, maybe.
What are you saying, Peter? Implying something about our usage patterns?
In our elite coastal cities,
you don't think they download as much adult material in Provo as they do?
Yeah, they actually maybe don't want to strain the network too heavily in Provo.
Moving right along, I got some pictures of what looks to be the polycarbonate body for a supposed budget iPhone. That supposed budget iPhone we've been hearing about forever. This comes from, surprise, surprise, comes from...
Need a budget iPad after the show's over.
Yes, we were having iPads dropped off set. This is supposedly the back of that budget iPhone that's been rumored forever, and it shows a design, that it is, I guess, reminiscent of like the 3GS perhaps, or the older generation. A little bit more square, but still it's got kind of the singular background.
Pre-glass days.
Exactly, which probably I think a lot of people would say.
Would love to go back to.
Exactly, yeah. So this looks reasonably legit, and we did make some calls to try to, gauge our level of confidence, and it's fairly high on this. So,
Apple said, of course, we always talk about stuff.
May we send you one right now?
Yes, you may. So, who knows? We are still waiting on our first Apple event of the year, by the way. Typically, by now, we'll have had 2 Apple events. Traditionally, there's one in January and then one right around GGC time in early April. We are now almost, we're getting on toward the second half of April here, and still no Apple event. So
it's the longest they've gone without one in
very long time.
In a long time.
Very long time. What's happening? What's going on?
They're building a better cuckoo clock.
Not a mousetrap?
There's a lot of opportunities out there.
They're just going to stop releasing new products. So.
Probably the way to go.
Go out on top. Absolutely.
Just see how long they can go. We're shutting down. We're not spending any more money on R&D.
I think this move makes sense at this point. I mean, they've had a budget iPhone in the way of kind of keeping the older model around for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So I think that this is a move that makes sense. Especially, I mean, I hate to say it, but especially now that we're in this kind of valley right now of Apple releases where everything has been kind of a point release anyway, or a smaller version of another product, that it would make sense. And there's certainly precedence for this. There's, I mean, on a computer front, for example, on the laptop front, they've well, not now, but they long had a budget version of
right. But they did just kill the MacBook not that long ago, which was their most affordable device, and they moved to the MacBook Air, which is
But there's rumors about them doing a new polycarbonate Mac.
Yeah, and this isn't, and certainly having 2 phones out at the same time isn't like Samsung level,
right?
It's not totally out of question. But the rumor has traditionally been just a smaller version of the iPhone, right?
Well, cheaper being the key factor. I don't think that we've heard that much in terms of specs or performance.
Well, yeah, I mean, I believe it was because it was sent in from a case manufacturer, and I think they said it's what?
Right. Yes.
That's what it says in the story.
Yes.
Well, I think that one of the things that Apple has to keep in mind here is that we're seeing a trend in the average cost of a phone of a high end smartphone going down, and the price pressure. I mean, the Nexus 4 is just the beginning. I'm seeing like these Arcos phones. What's the price of the cheapest one? That cheapest Arcos that was just announced?
Oh, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. But that is an Arcos phone.
But I'm just saying, like, my point is that there's a lot of downward price pressure on smartphones right now, and I think that in especially if you look at like what's coming out of the Chinese market, and the fact that you can get like a pretty good Android phone for $300, or $400 if you really want to push it. It's like it's hard to say that we're going to have you're only going to sell phones where the entry price starts at $650.
Do you think Apple has an interest? Everybody right now seems to be targeting the developing world. And we're seeing Ubuntu Mobile, Firefox, and obviously Nokia's going to have a pretty strong play over there as well. As that starts exploding, Apple's got to see that as a potential market, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think they already do.
Absolutely, and. We've talked about this before, how Apple will need to continue to expand their market if they're going to continue to, show the growth that they've been showing forever, which is, looking at the stock price. Again, today it's down, and ultimately, if Apple wants to continue to show these big steps forward, they've got to expand into new markets. And this, extremely high price, extremely high performance, nice high-end device isn't going to get them there. And the Arcos devices start at $100 off contract.
Yeah, it's $100.
And then
for a terrible phone, but
right.
But still $100. I mean, it's $100, and I think that's. I think that we've all seen the price of PCs come way down, and that downward price pressure. I mean, the idea that like $600 to $650 is like the price that a phone should be, right? I mean, that just doesn't make sense anymore.
But you certainly, everyone's always thought of Apple as being a premium company.
But I actually think that that Apple has become much more competitive in price.
Sure.
I think that the MacBook Air being a really good example of them introducing a product that is actually, in some respects, better priced than its competition.
Yeah, it's hard to find a good Ultrabook that is actually cheaper spec for spec than the MacBook Air.
I guess what I would ask is, why a move like this makes more sense than just keeping the previous generation around. I mean, are they going to be able to undercut the price by that much? Those phones are pretty cheap at this point.
It could be a few things. I mean, it could be that taking advantage of new networks. The fact that those phones are not LTE might be an issue in some markets. It could be that they are looking forward on their iOS roadmap and realize that there might be something in the 4 and the 4S, and maybe that will create some backwards compatibility issues with future versions of iOS, and they don't want to have to. They'd rather push people to a newer device which will have better forwards compatibility. I mean, there are a lot of things, but I mean, it's not just. I mean, the only thing that it's not as if switching from aluminum to polycarbonate is going to let you shave $300 off the price of a phone. Yeah,
and I wonder, I'm imagining that certainly if this is announced concurrently with the latest phone, and they roll out the new operating system, there's going to be plenty of features in there that aren't compatible with a budget version, right?
Not necessarily. This is believed to be running an A5, so presumably it should have the specs it needs.
But certainly, but and it's always kind of been the case that they'll roll out a new iOS, and the last version, for whatever reason, can upgrade to some of the features, but not all of the features.
Right, like when they rolled out Siri very gradually for no reason other than to give you a reason to buy the iPhone, the new iPhone. We'll certainly see what sort of new functionality they can roll in. I mean, I think we're all expecting a pretty big update for Siri. I think there's a lot of other stuff we're expecting too. And of course, a whole new look and feel to iOS 7. Ultimately, this has got to be running iOS 7 when it launches. But if there are these sums, well, I guess it doesn't have to be. But
I mean,
presumably
it will be. If there is some exclusive features in whatever the iPhone 5S or in maybe the iPhone 6, it's possible. It's possible.
And there was I think in the same story, there was iPad rumors as well from the same source, I believe.
Yeah, from the same source, we got pictures of a case from a supposed new 5th generation iPad, which I think we talked about this before. Basically, it'll be smaller bezels, more of a shape more aligned with the current iPod Touch and the iPad Mini.
I don't think there's going to be a new iPad. I think Apple's just going to stop. I think they realize that they've nailed it. The best tablet in the world.
Yeah.
So why make a new one?
Sure.
I wish we.
You want to see heads exploding?
I wish we had an overlay of Apple's stock price, like as we're saying these things.
Joe, can we get that for next week?
It's probably these guys are idiots. I'm going to buy Apple stock.
Moving right along, speaking of some more financial information, which is always great to hear from us, we've got Nokia filing Q1 results, $7.7 billion in revenue on 5.6 million Lumia sold, which is a reasonably healthy number.
Very few, yeah.
They tried to put a positive spin saying net profit was $236 million, but if you use the IFRS rules, it's actually more of a $150 million loss, so split the difference and then broke even. Is that how it works?
Not exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it just has to. I mean, having not looked at the filing specifically, I mean, usually these things have to do with how you book and accrue revenue and deferred things and deduct expenses and whatnot. So it could be that they're booking revenue in a way, future revenue now, or I mean. It's hard to say, but I think the takeaway is really that the number of phones that they sold, and it's gone up. I mean, I think that
everywhere but in the United States, literally everywhere but in the United States.
The U.S. is a tough market,
right?
It's a tough market
by 200,000.
As Brian alluded to, 5.6 million Lumia sold worldwide. 400,000 of those were in the U.S., which is down from 700,000 the quarter before.
700, but was it 700,000 Lumias or 700,000? Was that including Symbian devices?
That's overall handset sales. Overall sales, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe that the absolute number of of Windows phones that they sold went up.
Well,
I don't know.
I would just say that I don't think that Symbian's going to be a huge factor in that because they've never sold a lot of Symbian phones in the United States.
But they still had some Symbian devices sold I don't know. I mean, without knowing the breakdown, it's just hard to say.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it's troubling overall that number went down. I mean, that doesn't bode well for them.
Well, I think it has to do with I would like to know what the number if we saw the number of Windows phones they sold decreasing, but I doubt that's the case. I think that there was still T-Mobile still carried Symbian phones.
But yeah, I guess it's just that
without knowing the numbers, we can't say for certain is what I'm saying.
Very firm.
I say that I think we can certainly say for certain that we can't say for certain.
Peter straight shooting Rojas can't say for sure. But anyhow, not exactly great news from Nokia. But again, we're still. Are we still in this rebuilding phase, or have we moved past that now?
The numbers have gone up, and there's potential for them. Obviously word of mouth when people start seeing Windows phones out there when there's more. And
I got to say, up in Seattle, I saw a lot more Windows phones than I have.
I should hope so. Jesus, if there's one city, there should be mandatory.
Well, were they? What? More importantly, I guess what percentage of them were Nokia? Probably pretty high, right?
Very high. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, and HTC has their U.S. headquarters there. But
the takeaway, again, you're right. The takeaway here is that overall numbers have gone up.
Well, I think I don't think they're out of the woods yet. I mean, this is if you look at, they have to get back to the volumes of phones that they were selling before. I mean, and it's going to take a long time, and it's taking much longer than I think they had expected. I think both Microsoft and Nokia, thought by Q1 of 2013 that Windows Phone would be much further entrenched than it's been, and it's clearly not getting the uptake that they would like. I mean, yes, it's getting picked up in non-US markets more quickly than it is here, and they are gaining, but
where Nokia is a very successful brand.
Yeah, but I just think, I think to be a distant number 3 for Windows Phone to be a distant third platform.
Yeah,
and it's not even conclusively third. But I mean, it's really still just an Android iOS game right now.
Sure, and its chief competition finally just launched for third. Finally, just launched some handsets.
But I'm saying, that's such a terrible position to be in. To be like, I'm going to battle it out for distant third. I mean, that's not even a
and I don't know. I contradict me if you think I'm off base on this, but it seems to be a lot. This lack of adoption seems to be a lot more in the hands of Microsoft. In the hands of Windows Phone than it is Nokia, than it is a hardware manufacturer.
Well, in part. I mean, I think that there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of the marketing. I think that Microsoft has actually done a pretty decent job of getting developers to create apps for the ecosystem, for the platform.
They've certainly got the funding to offer incentives.
Yeah, and they know that they need to do that, but it's still. We talk about it becomes this vicious cycle where lack of adoption breeds lack of adoption, but I think that for all these guys, they have to figure it out by the end of this year. I mean, I don't know how many more years. Microsoft can afford to play this game for a long time, but Nokia cannot.
And if the Surface taught us anything, it's that just blanketing the market with advertisements doesn't ensure the success of a product. But I feel like I didn't see nearly as many Windows Phone ads as I did Surface ads, and that's probably just because Microsoft doesn't have a hardware dog in that race.
Not yet. Moving right along, Sony's latest camera.
What do you know, Tim?
Moving right along, Sony launched the Nex 3N, which is their latest interchangeable lens camera targeted for consumers. It's basically like a successor to the C3 that we use quite a bit. Big difference here is a slimmer body from the C3, and it's also got the new 16 to 50 millimeter powered zoom lens, which collapses when you turn it off, which is kind of nice. So it's a slimmer overall body than on the C3, which we have. I think we've got 10 or 12 of them on staff, more or less, just because they're great little cameras. So this has got the powered zoom, which is nice. So it's actually going to be a little bit more pocketable than before. Zach Koenig did the review for us, as ever on camera stuff, and found it to be a really nice, very capable little shooter. I mean,
isn't the price is really, I think, the biggest thing here, right?
Yes, $500 with the kit lens. So that's pretty fair for a really high quality camera.
Yes, and the consensus there seems to be that this is kind of the entry level. What do we call it? Mirrorless, compact mirrorless right now?
Mirrorless interchangeable lens, take your pick.
I mean, this is if you're looking to make that jump. If you've been using a top end one, then this probably isn't the next best camera for you.
Yeah, absolutely not. But if you're looking to make a step up from your typical compact camera, but you don't want to go the full DSLR route and get something massive, this is definitely a very good way to go.
I have actually no conception of how much nice point and shoots cost at this point. How far off is this?
They're typically in the $300 to $400 range. I mean, there are some like super zoom ones with 30x giant lenses on the front
Which
that
are
are
as big
close
as
to this price,
micro Four Thirds.
or bigger, in many cases. But the only real knocks against this is that there's no powered hot shoe, which is a little bit unfortunate. But it does have a built-in flash. It doesn't have a mic input either, which is really just kind of more of an issue for us. Your average consumer doesn't really need.
On the top where you can stick the directional.
The thing is gone.
The thing is gone. It's too bad.
It is
and
gone.
Then some kind of isn't there like jerky zoom on there too?
Right. So this is a powered zoom, whereas on the C3 it's with the kit lens on the C3 it's a manual zoom, so it's a little bit choppy. But really, it's pretty rare that you can zoom anyway on these sorts of cameras and get anything smooth. So. Really would recommend you stop filming, zoom in, start filming again, and then use some software to cut it together.
I like that manual zoom though; it's nice.
It's a sort of shaky look as it sort of moves in.
Oh
yeah, it's got a nice feel to it. I do too.
Yeah.
But we're moving to these powered digital ways, Brian. You've got to move away from your analog.
I just feel like I could shoot some really great retro Beastie Boys videos, for example, with a really nice zoom. No. Some gritty.
Somebody's got to make
films.
retro pop films these days.
Yeah. Well,
might as well be us.
There won't be that many more Beastie Boys.
Might as well be us.
Up,
so if you're looking for an ILC lens, you got a budget of $500. I don't think this is about the best. I mean, the Micro Four Thirds stuff, they haven't really been a lot of innovation on that front. Sony's really, as far as I'm concerned, at the top of the pack for ILC stuff.
Yeah, Micro Four Thirds has definitely been lagging a little bit. Though I'm hoping that, Olympus seems overdue to come up with a successor to that. Was it the DM5? Was that their high end?
I think that's the most recent.
Yeah, that's almost a year old at this point. So,
yeah, I think it's just that all the other manufacturers have tried and nobody's had near the success of Sony. So I'm just wondering. I don't actually have no idea how big the market is right now. I know that when I walk around with a camera that looks like that, a lot of people stop me on the street because they've never seen that before.
Yeah. To this day, I mean, I see them, of course, a lot of trade shows and CES, that sort of thing. You see a lot of people carrying them. But out in the street, I still don't see that many people carrying these ILC cameras. I think most people are still in the mindset that they either have the compact camera, or if they want to get a serious camera, they need to buy something big. Yeah. I think it's really about volume and size more so than actual camera capability.
So they're gonna, they're gonna have to see some success in there before they really start putting a lot of force behind it.
Yeah, I think so. They aren't exactly a consumer powerhouse at this point, but ultimately, I feel like the prosumer level people are pretty intelligent when it comes to this sort of thing, and I think that they'll see a lot more.
Maybe those $100 Polaroids are going to be the answer to it.
Or maybe those the iPhone case from our friend Chandra. What's that called?
Oh, the Will.i.am.
Will.i.am thing. Yeah. Can't remember the name of that.
Oh, that horrible. That
amazing.
We could also look it up with all the computers we have in front of us.
We do. We could, or we could just let it lie.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't mention it.
Toshiba has launched a new Ultrabook. This is the Kira book, which is an interesting name. 13-inch Ultrabook. Really, the talking point about this really is the display, 2560 by 1440.
It looks really nice.
Yeah, so if you've been kind of waiting for Apple to make a Retina Air, maybe you need to buy a Toshiba.
I will.
With Windows, of course.
Yeah, I won't mention the source, but I did see somebody makes some mention in a story about it being a competitor to Apple's Retina display MacBook Air,
which doesn't exist.
Which doesn't exist. We're at the point now where rumors are essentially accepted as being actual Apple products.
Well, I think we all feel like it's gonna happen.
But if only because we want one so bad, right?
But it's the same. It's the same thing with there were those rumors about the Microsoft Watch, and people were like, they're making a competitor to Apple's iWatch, which doesn't exist.
It also
and we all forget that actually they did do watches before.
Yeah. Samsung did, and Microsoft did, and many watches.
Microsoft has done a lot of things in the past that they stopped doing, waited for somebody else to do better, and then started.
Well, that is true.
And then tried to get in the market a little bit late. Pricing on this starts at $1,600, so that's pretty dear. But really nice looking laptop. Dana did the hands-on. Really, if you're looking for a high-end Ultrabook. It seems like this might be worth waiting for. And when is it launching? Pretty soon. Not sure when it's launching. May 12th. So about a month away.
Oh, slightly belated birthday present for me if you want to. Little
duly noted.
Don't everyone buy Brian one. It's like, we got to coordinate.
I only need one. Yeah. I mean, if you guys can go in on it together.
Duly noted, Mr. Heater. Duly noted. So would this be enough to get you to switch away from an Air, Mr. Rojas?
Probably not. But I'm certainly be open to it. I'd really like to see it in person, see the screen, because sometimes even the resolution is not an issue. And I think this is one of the challenges that Toshiba is going to have is like where, who's going to be carrying these that I could see one in person. They're going to be at Best Buy. And then other than that, like there aren't that many other.
I feel like you might be able to see one in person. I think
well, I mean, me, but I'm saying, but like the average person. And I think that's
go to Peter's house.
Yeah, go to my house. But I'd certainly consider it. And I'm someone that bounces between Windows and Mac all the time and run at least always run parallels on if I'm running a Mac. So I'd certainly consider it. And I do have a Dell laptop running Windows 8 right now, which I like, even though it doesn't have a touchscreen.
Brian, you just got a Retina Pro not that long ago. Any regrets?
Yeah, other than the 90 dead pixels on the screen
and the battery,
not too many. No, the battery.
You have dead pixels on it.
Yeah, I have
send it back.
Yeah, I need to. I just need to find a time when it's convenient for me to send my computer back. Yeah, I mean, as we keep having this conversation about how people get locked into ecosystems on their phone, and that's I think probably tenfold on your desktop, right?
Yes and no. I mean, it's getting easier to switch between.
Well, if you have two systems, sure, if you're using them concurrently, but I think to totally make that switch is a much bigger ask.
Yeah,
you use backups more frequently, Brian. Maybe it would be a little bit easier for you.
I used it right before I left. I didn't bring my hard drive with me.
Brian's been a little tardy on his backups in this trip.
Stop. Okay, so
stop the podcast. Stop the podcast, everybody. We gotta go. We gotta go off the record.
No, all I was saying, Tim, is that. The only way, because I was gone for, as people I'm sure noticed, I didn't
really get any.
You just put this bird on my seat and
I did. Nobody knows.
No, but the only reason, like, because again, like when you're on the road for 2 weeks, you kind of lose all conception of time. The only way I knew that I had been gone for exactly a week was when my time machine popped up. I just wasn't in front of my hard drive, Tim. I didn't bring my hard drive with me. I backed up right before I left.
Somewhere Brian's poor hard drive was sitting in his apartment, all alone, thinking, gosh, I hope his hard drive doesn't crash while he's away.
I just think that like it'll be even happier to see me if we have some distance apart.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder is what you're saying? Just like that classic King's Quest game?
It's just like that classic King's Quest game.
That's exactly what everyone was thinking that.
Yeah.
I have an important question for you, Peter.
Okay.
Can I borrow your power cable?
I knew
here?
that's what you were going to say, actually. Wasn't that funny?
Reading my mind.
Yeah.
Reading my mind. Let's talk about the Galaxy Mega, because it's really physically large.
Yeah, it is. It's larger than the Galaxy 2.
It's some creative naming there, too.
I love that name. I think it's a great name.
Hey, truth in advertising. It's there are two versions, 5.8 inch and the 6.3 inch, but we've been focusing on the 6.3 inch because it's the larger of the two.
They should call it the Galaxy Tablet Mini. Right?
Sure. James Trew did the hands-on for us in the UK. Said regarding the styling, Samsung merely took the Galaxy S4 and gave it a good zap with the Enlargo gun. So basically, it is all exactly the same. TM, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they had some kind of an Enlargo/Shrinko gun.
What are you, an beginner?
Think of the money they could save if they could. Sounds like a Ratchet and Clank kind of thing.
Thank you. I knew you would get it.
So it's a big 720p phone without a stylus.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have been saying I'm looking very seriously at the Galaxy 2, but it's just not big enough.
Okay,
Samsung, when will you come out with a bigger phone?
So here's the thing. So I love the screen size on the Kindle, which is about 6 inches, right? And it's like kind of a great size for a device. It's a great size for a device that you're going to do a lot of reading on. It's kind of more easily pocketed. Yep. It's weird in that like this is clearly meant to replace your phone, but I'm kind of partial to the size as a tablet. I'm not sure that I'd want to buy one and carry one around, but just given how much I do like the screen size on the Kindle, I could totally see using a 6.3 inch tablet. I would want to see a 1080p resolution.
Yeah,
just so that text would look a lot better. But even at 720p, it's going to look good. I mean, it's better than you get on an iPad Mini, which has.
These are mid-range devices again, so nothing really groundbreaking in terms of specs.
Yeah, I mean,
they're just teeing us up for the Note 3.
Yeah.
How big will the Note 3 be?
I mean, they couldn't release that phone and not have it be bigger, right?
The Note 3's got to be bigger.
You think 6.5?
Yeah.
Maybe not 6.5, but it's got to be around 6.
6.301.
I want them just to keep pushing the envelope.
Invest in cargo pants now, everybody.
Wouldn't that be great if like Old Navy had a huge surge in cargo pants sales because of this? Like there was a big. I mean, it would be terrible because people would be wearing.
But the thing is, people buy these because they either don't want or can't afford both a smartphone and a tablet, and this is something that does split the difference. And I think, to be honest, given how little people make phone calls these days, a lot of people. I mean, I certainly try to do it as infrequently as I can get away with. Having a device that is mainly a tablet but is still pretty portable is. I mean, that's not crazy.
I don't think it's even just that too, because certainly, we know plenty of people who own tablets and have one of these phones, and I think it's just that perceptions have changed so much about phones that, like, again, this is due for an upgrade, and I keep looking at this thing and it looks so small to me at this point.
It's like a baby phone.
Yeah,
it's a phone for babies.
Yeah, it is a phone for you. Have a baby. You want my baby phone?
Yeah, I would give that to my 4-month-old, and he would enjoy it.
Got a nice little case for you on too. Throw out this garbage phone.
Whoa. You really threw that, actually.
Brian's angsty today. He's got a lot of energy pent up from all this traveling.
He clearly needs to get some more sleep. Someone mentioned the pad phone.
Don't talk to me about backups, Tim.
Did you back up your phone?
I hope so. You just threw it across the room.
Actually, I just got a note. Again, because like I hadn't had it on Wi-Fi the whole time, and I got home, so it automatically synced to Wi-Fi, and it told me that I need to buy more space on iCloud.
How convenient!
You're a mess, Ryan. You are a mess.
It's my rabbit doesn't even know me anymore.
Terrible. Some breaking news: Microsoft's financials just dropped. Exciting financial news in that.
Palmer looks really excited in that picture.
$6 billion in profit. Revenue, what was the revenue number? $20.49 billion. Basically flat. And the CFO, Peter Klein, is stepping down, which is the other news out here. So,
get rid of the CFO, but not Ballmer.
Absolutely. That'll definitely help you because he's probably adding wrong, right? I mean, right? Right? No.
He's not cutting costs aggressively enough.
Windows Division revenue is up to $5.7 billion, which is a nice increase from $4.62. But then again, they do have a new operating system that they didn't have a year ago.
Do you think Ballmer, do you think anybody ever tells Ballmer that something is a bad idea? I mean, I feel like he's the kind of guy who's cultivated this environment around the office where people probably are terrified to tell him no.
I'm pretty sure they have a graveyard for those men in Seattle. We should have visited
have you ever
while
met
we were there.
He's really physically in person. He's very imposing.
I've seen him. I don't think that I've ever.
I interviewed him a long time ago, and I did feel like I was. It's like I did feel like I was interviewing Bigfoot, and that like he may accidentally rip off my arm.
He is from the Seattle area. Do you think there's any possibility that he shaped a Yeti?
Wow,
or that he's part Bigfoot? I can't believe.
I don't know that anyone's ever drawn that line before, bro.
He's 9 feet tall and he howls.
And he really likes developers too.
Yeah, and the other weird thing about him is that there's no video of him online.
This is starting to feel
that was just big.
This is starting to feel like a dead end to me. If I can get
no, but in all seriousness,
eject.
I feel like there are certain executives out there who have created this environment where it's sort of okay to tell them, to bounce ideas off them, and Ballmer just seems like the exact opposite of that.
Well, the thing, I mean, it's fundamentally Ballmer's not an ideas guy.
Yeah.
He's a sales guy. He's a guy
who shared a dorm room with Bill Gates.
Yeah, but he's a great salesman. And I think he did a great job building the Microsoft business over the past few decades. I think where it's clear that he is not where he's deficient is that he's not a guy who's going to be able to sort of map out this grand vision for computing going forward. And the guys that were good at that have largely all left, like Sanofsky and Jay Allard and obviously Bill Gates.
But I think I think you can still be a good CEO and not be a brilliant innovator in and of yourself. You just have to be open to those ideas.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, I think that's what I'm saying.
Those people who are feeding him ideas are gone.
I think that he just doesn't. I think that he just. It's hard when you don't have that sort of, way of approaching the world to be open to people that are all the time. And I mean, and I think the problem is that, like, Microsoft is performing well enough that it's not like you're going to have this big shareholder revolt and the board is going to be like, well, we have to get rid of this guy. And Bill Gates controls so much of the stock that it'd be hard to get rid of him without it being, without Bill having to be the one that makes it happen. And also, I think that if Bill, pushes Ballmer out, he kind of has to come back, and he really doesn't want to go back.
Saving the world.
He really doesn't want to go back.
He's doing great things.
I think until Microsoft gets to the point where they don't have enough excess cash that they can kind of buy their way through things. I mean, I think that might be one of the main things that's keeping them from being super innovative is that, and Bing is a perfectly fine search engine and it does things really well. But the reason why it's been any kind of success is they've pushed it out there. I mean, I was getting Wi-Fi for free Wi-Fi at SFO, and they made me take this little Bing versus Google test. And there's enough.
Did you pass?
I picked Google. I think 4 out of 5 times. But I still got free Wi-Fi though, and that's I think really the moral of that story. But there's enough. There are obviously incredibly smart and incredibly innovative people at Microsoft.
Lots of them.
Yeah, and they're doing incredibly exciting things over at Microsoft Research, and every once in a while, one of those things will sneak through, and that was the case of the Kinect. I think is something that snuck through and became not only just sort of a really successful commercial product, but a really exciting one as well.
Well, but I think that this is sort of the one of the problems. I mean, setting aside the issue of mobile, them having a real problem with mobile, is that things like Xbox, a really well executed part of the business. Obviously, the fact that they were able to displace Sony in the the console space, I mean, that's a huge thing, that accomplishment. And but that division of the company doesn't produce that much profit, that much revenue for them compared with the twin franchises of Office and Windows. And I think that the legacy franchises, those still produce huge amounts of money. And it's obvious to everyone, including people at Microsoft, that at some point those franchises are going to have, serious challenges. But it's not today, and it's not tomorrow. And in the meantime, the parts of the businesses that are being executed well, that are growing, are not, like, Xbox is never. It's not going to be ever as big as Windows. But there's nothing. It's not on that trajectory.
What I would say though is, and I don't think this is a good example of something that was well executed. But if you look at what happens when Microsoft takes a big chance in a space like that, makes something totally different, it flops. I mean, Windows 8 is a good example of, like, them trying to at least take a different approach. Yeah. I don't think it was a good one, but people didn't adopt it because it was so different.
Well, I mean, this is sort of, I think, illustrates the problem that they're having, is that they knew that, again, that they're facing so many challenges with the rise of the tablet and mobile computing, and that they wanted to adapt to that. And they did take a risk. And I actually think it's awesome that they did take a risk. For a company as big as Microsoft and as maybe conservative as you could argue they are, to be able to take a chance like that and roll the dice on their number one franchise, that's a really big deal. And actually, I think they should get more credit for taking a chance.
Sure.
I think that it hasn't worked out to the extent that they've wanted it to. I would agree with you there. And I think that's sort of the problem, is that what do you do? Because
absolutely.
What do you do when fundamentally the desktop, the business of licensing desktop OS and a desktop OS it's not going to disappear. I think anyone who says that the PC is going to die is an idiot. But it's clear that, like, the growth is over.
I guess what you do is what you the other option is you do what they did with Windows Phone, which is you wait until it's so old and so stale that people will embrace a complete revamp of the operating system.
People did adopt a total revamp of Windows Mobile, and it was called Android and iOS.
Yeah, no, I know exactly, but I mean I'm saying that's the other option. It's unless you can tweak things I don't know. Unless maybe Apple is a better example of them kind of trying to make those changes over time, changes that clearly point in another direction.
Well, I think part of it is that a big part of it is timing. A big part of it is how much you're willing to cannibalize, and I think that Apple did a good job of that, of realizing that their desktop. And I say, by desktop, I mean both laptops and, regular desktops. That business was not going to grow, even if it wasn't going to die, and that they needed to get into mobile. I think the real problem is that, again, for Microsoft, you can't charge as much for a mobile OS license as you can for a desktop OS license. And the real profit for Apple is in the hardware.
Yeah, well, but again, Apple was able to do that because they were in such bad shape.
That's what I'm saying. Part of it is just being, they're in bad shape, but also the business is structured really differently than Microsoft. And so, they could, by replacing one hardware business with another, in some respects made sense. Whereas replacing, trying to substitute make up for the loss in their desktop OS licensing business with a mobile OS licensing business is not working. And I think this is why, we saw Windows RT, right? Which was them trying to figure out how do we, how do we introduce a tablet OS that we can charge a lot of money for, rather than the little amount of money that we charge for a Windows Phone license. And I think that caused them to make a really bad decision there. I think that if they were going to introduce a tablet OS, it should have been based on Windows Phone rather than Windows 8.
It's also just it's hard to be such a software focused company at this point, when there's so many other players and when there's open source and things like that, when hardware manufacturers can get Android essentially for free. Although I guess they are paying a license, and they're paying that license to Microsoft.
Yeah,
so maybe Microsoft should elect.
Well, and this is why I think that the fact that Microsoft is starting to dip its toe into hardware with the Surface, I think that they probably are realizing that down the line they're going to have to be like Apple, and that they're going to have to.
They realized that a long time ago.
Yeah, and I just don't think that. I think that they're better off if they're going to sell phones with Windows on it. If people are going to buy phones with Windows on it, it may as well be from them, and may as well collect 100% of the revenue rather than a Windows Phone license is what, $15, $20. Mm-hmm. It's not that much in the grand scheme of things.
But it's again, as long as they're still making $5 or whatever off of every Android phone sold, they're still going to have an influx of money, and it'll still be difficult to convince them that they need to go in an entirely different direction.
Not something they want to rely on, though, I don't think. Speaking of Android, Google also dropped their earnings, $14 billion in revenue, $3.35 billion in net income, which is actually up 31% on revenue year over year, which is pretty great, and a $500 million increase in net income year over year. So Google definitely looking strong. So, all right, let's get back on track through our topics because we're running low on time here. Okay. We got some other stuff we want to talk about. Links. Oh, sorry, the Kobo. We should talk about the Kobo because it's here.
Yeah,
it's the Aura HD, a 6.8-inch HD screen for $169.
This is, it's the first e-reader with a 6.8-inch screen, and everything's pretty much 6 inches at this point, save for the Kobo Mini, which is 5 inches. Mm-hmm. That's the industry standard. It's still an ink display. It's an incredibly high-res ink display. It's 1440 by 1080, which is crazy for an e-reader.
Yeah, and it looks great.
It's bigger.
The screen looks great.
Yeah, the screen looks amazing.
It's chunkier. It's heavier. It costs a lot more. It's $169, which is kind of an obscene amount to pay for an e-reader.
We were talking before.
I don't think that's crazy.
I feel like there's a market for a higher end e-reader. We talked about the Kindle DX, which was a failure, but I think that was way overpriced compared to other things at the time. And it was also physically very large and bulky. But I feel like there's a market for a well-made, nice, small Kindle.
Well, and the first Kindle cost
Kindle though.
Well, ebook reader.
Kobo.
But the first Kindle cost what? $399?
Yeah, I have one of those.
It's not cheap.
I know, but I'm just saying, it's dropped so much that for a company like Kobo to come out and anticipate that people are going to spend, $40 more than the Kindle. That's a pretty big leap. That said, they're not expecting people to pay that. I interviewed the CEO when they were announcing this, and he basically told me that this is a niche device. They know that
that's why they're announcing it. It's like 10,000. I think they're only.
I don't know if at the time they didn't announce a number. They might have subsequently. He wouldn't give me an exact number at the time.
Where did I see the 10,000 number from?
I don't know. But he didn't give me an exact number. The only thing he told me is that it's not going to move.
We've got 10,000 customers together across dozens of countries to ask them what to do for them.
Okay, sorry. I don't know why I got... Okay.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting thing, too. But getting back to the original point, they basically said, we're not making this thing through the end of the year. We know that it's too big, essentially, and that it's too expensive for most people to want to do.
It's too much e-reader for you to handle, American.
Yeah, I mean, just from looking, I mean, the text does look really good, and I think we were talking about before. I mean, Kobo has actually done a surprisingly good job with the edge. I guess we call it edge lighting. Better than the Paperwhite
front lighting,
front lighting, whatever it is. But and I think they've done better than the than Amazon did with the Kindle Paperwhite, which has that weird effect on the bottom of the device.
We loved it at the time because it was that much better than what Barnes & Noble had done, which is just really kind of segmented and not great. Yeah, they did. I mean, but the problem with that is that device came out, like 4 months after the Paperwhite and almost 8 months after the Barnes & Noble.
Yeah.
So, certainly they have to be the first to innovate, especially when you consider the fact that most of these devices are essentially made up of the same components.
Well, they're all getting their screens from the same place.
They're all getting their screens from the same place. They're mostly getting their processors from the same place.
How long ago was it the Paperwhite introduced? Has it been almost a year?
Yeah, April. I think April of last year sounds about right to me. April, May, that time frame. Spring.
It was that long ago.
Was it that long ago?
Maybe it was summer. I don't. Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. But so I asked that. I asked the CEO. If this is essentially a hardware arms race using the same hardware, how do you differentiate yourself?
September.
Okay.
So we could reasonably expect a successor. I mean, this summer, possibly.
It's possible.
Probably. With this resolution.
Well, this resolution...
on a Kindle.
The same...
That's what I'm saying. It's the same...
in order to use this specific screen, they would have to go up to 6.8 until the 6.0 version is introduced. And once the 6.0 version is introduced, everybody's going to have it. I mean, there's no question about that. So I was asking him how you fight a hardware arms race when everybody's using the same hardware, and he basically told me, well, we've basically come to accept that hardware is not really that important, that you shouldn't even realize what device you're holding in your hand, which kind of explains the reason why there's not really much going on this thing. And it's the same with the Paperwhite. I mean, they're both just kind of pretty vanilla looking devices. The only really interesting one of the three is the Barnes & Noble. And he said the way you distinguish yourself is the software and the way that the hardware and software interact.
Is there any real distinguishing factor that makes you think this is worth the premium?
There's distinguishing factors. I mean, this is the same software that you got. I mean, they're not going to go out of their way to introduce a totally new software suite for what they've been calling a niche device. And Kobo has really been trying to distinguish themselves on the social front. I don't think that they've done anything that really compelling.
Yeah.
They're basically making you play games for reading. If anybody's going to win the social software game, it's going to be Amazon, because they just bought a company called Goodreads, which is going to, I mean, that's going to open things wide open. It's going to open things up.
Things are going to be really open after they're open.
Twice that you would use the word. You would use
so open.
The same sense. But I mean, that's, I'll read a book. I read lots of books, and I certainly see the appeal in sharing that information, for letting people know that you've just read a good book. And Goodreads it's got to be far and away the number one service for that out there.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's why Amazon, I think, had to buy them.
Yeah, I would put some small amount of money on them, just again making the move where they just close down Goodreads, the site, and have it integrated solely into Kindle, so only people who own Kindles can use it, and that'll be a huge win for them.
That's certainly possible. That would kind of alienate a lot of their users, but I think
it would. But we've seen lots of companies do that in the past. Picasa is a good example of that.
Yeah, no, I think it's certainly possible. I will say that I do like that Kobo is another alternative, and I really don't want to see. Just given the troubles that Barnes & Noble has been having, that you don't want Amazon to be the only player in this e-ink market. And from playing with this a little bit, I mean, it seems like the software is better than I have the Glow. My wife has the Glow, and it's
in terms of speed,
in terms of the page flip speed, and like, I mean,
the processor is faster. Yeah,
it's more responsive. Yeah. And until I did a software update, the Glow was almost unusable. So we had some real problems at first, and that's where I think Kobo has a real challenge. Is that
that's one of the places Kobo has a real challenge.
Yeah, it's that I just don't think they're as good at the software as as Amazon is.
Which again is troubling when your CEO comes out and says that's how we're going to distinguish ourselves. I mean, there's still some hiccups there. Opening things isn't super fast, but yeah, the page turns are pretty quick. It's 1 gigahertz, which is up from I believe 800 on the Glow. I do like the higher res screen. I don't know that that's going to be a big deal breaker for people because honestly, 95% of the time, 98% of the time, you're staring at text. They said it's really for illustrations, but how often really are you looking at illustrations?
I can tell the difference. I mean, the text looks better to me than on the paperwhite.
But I don't think it's going to be a deal breaker to move a lot of people over there.
If I read a lot, and I try to, but I don't get to as much as I would like, I would certainly feel compelled by this. But if I was on sort of in the Kindle ecosystem, you might want to just say, well, I'll just wait a few months and see what happens.
Presumably Apple or Amazon, excuse me.
But if I'm someone that has an earlier Kobo and reads a lot, I mean, $169 is not like a crazy amount of money to spend if you read a lot of books.
No, it's absolutely. If you're locked into the Kobo ecosystem, that's a pretty good.
I'm not sure I know that many people that
I don't
describe that way.
And certainly the book offerings aren't up where they are for Amazon and Barnes and Noble are huge. I think this is something that this could certainly do well outside the U.S.
Intel spent some time this week talking about their next generation Atom microarchitecture. So basically low power devices, talking inexpensive laptops, that kind of thing. CEO Paul Pollicino had some interesting quotes. Basically said that they expect that lower end ultrabooks with touch displays will be down to $200 by the end of the year, which is pretty interesting.
Of a new Kobo.
Pretty close to it, getting us down to netbook level pricing, but presumably with much nicer devices. That's a pretty compelling idea, and something that could certainly help to turn around PC sales if indeed it comes to pass.
Honestly, I think like one of the main things that really killed the netbooks is that they were so chunky.
They were pretty terrible, and they had like 8 gigs of storage typically, and an awful Atom processor. Now. Yeah, there's certainly. I mean. Yeah, the ultimate reason why they were so successful is because they were so much cheaper than anything else at the time. And if we can actually make some nice laptops that are so much cheaper than everything else, I think that'd be fantastic. So hooray to Netbook 2.0. And other interesting news this week.
Let's not call it that, though.
No. From HP. HP is actually partnering with Leap Motion. They're going to start including Leap controllers with some of their select devices. They didn't say which ones yet this year. And then starting, I think, next year, they're going to start actually building this technology into their devices. So if you're not familiar, Leap Motion is like, think of your Kinect. It's motion detection. Basically, you can make gestures and have that be received by the software.
Well, I don't hope I didn't gesture in there. Might have. They're trying to not use gesture to describe it because it's supposed to be a lot more of a natural motion. Versus I interviewed the CEO at South by Southwest. I thought it was kind of interesting. He compared using the Kindle to kind of having to learn a new form of sign language, where you use a gesture to do something different apart from that. It's a really nice piece of hardware. It's really good at distinguishing, if you hold out your hand, different fingers, things like that. But again, this is another really good example of something that's going to be fully dependent on the people developing for it. But that does bode pretty well for them because I think they ship something where in the neighborhood of like 12,000 of these developer units. So people are incredibly excited to develop for this hardware.
Yeah, it is definitely exciting. I was excited to see what happens with Kinect for Windows as well, with Microsoft putting a lot of weight behind that. But ultimately, I feel like this gives Leap a really huge leg up, having it integrated into, a major manufacturer.
And ASUS.
Yeah.
In the past, yeah. And they're moving towards just having this embedded in things. Another really interesting thing about it is the sensor itself is so small that you can put it on just about anything, and that's another reason why I think they could potentially blow the Kinect out of the water.
Pretty exciting. We are running low on time. Got a couple quick questions here. A1 Mega in chat asking, when will a cell phone battery life last more than 2 or 3 days and keep a slim profile? Peter, you want to make any wild guesses here?
I think that we need to have some sort of breakthrough in chemistry for that to happen. we do keep reading about like these amazing next generation batteries that people keep developing in labs. I think there was a story just on the site today or yesterday maybe about something.
Yeah,
but
there's a new charging technique for lithium-ion batteries.
Yeah.
They charge 100 times faster than before. So, in theory, you could have a really super quick charging phone. You set it down for a second and it's fully charged.
Yeah. I wouldn't hold your breath. I think part of the problem is that, the phones are what phones are expected to do keeps expanding and growing, and the ability of batteries to store more energy is not keeping pace. And so it's really, any real improvements we've seen in battery life have come mainly, not entirely, but mainly from people getting, companies engineering more power efficient chips.
And that's another thing too, is I think that the companies themselves are going to have to be focused on that a little bit more than they are right now as the next big feature. I think the only company really that's paying any mind to that is probably Motorola, right? That's
they're the only ones who are
touting
making
that as a big
right.
feature.
Well, they're leading with that, but ultimately it could be said that they're leading with that because they don't have much else to lead with.
Graphene's going to change everything. Mark my words.
I also got a question from Trevor in chat asking, are we excited about the HTC One launching? Sure, I think so.
Yeah. Finally.
Living on Prayer on
Thanks,
Twitter
Trevor.
asking, is Engadget going to do a review of Google Glass as soon as we are able to get our hands on one? We absolutely will. That's it. I think we should call this podcast to a close.
The lights just went out across the street, which I think is probably means it's time for us to leave.
Wow, that's disconcerting. Thanks very much for joining us, everybody. Thank you, Peter, for joining us as well. Thank you, Brian. Welcome home.
It's also good to be back.
Good stuff. Make sure you go do your laundry and get some sleep tonight. Thank you again to Audible for sponsoring the podcast as well. Again, you can go to audible.com/Engadget if you would like to get your free book. And we'll be back next week with another episode of the Engadget Podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.